Right, so in this exercise we will be reproducing this website. We will be focusing on the top part for this video, and then we move to the next one, okay? Here's the wireframe of what we are going to be creating. So as you can see, we have a bunch of boxes there. Let's start with the first one, or the most outer one, that is this red one. I will try to select it and move it so you know which one I'm talking about. So it's this one, okay? So first we will create all the content on HTML, and then we will change it via CSS and style it the way we want to, okay? So I will be using brackets for this. The first thing I'm gonna do is, let me just pause the video while I give you the images files. So let's get right into it. What we are going to start with is actually adding these boxes that we took from the wireframe and add them into our HTML, okay? So right inside the body, we will start with the first one, which is the most outer one. We will just add it as a div, and I will give it a class of wrapper. Now, why do I do this? Because I know later on I will need to select this box and change it somehow. And I will at least change its width and make it be center in the web page. And so I know I will select it later, and I'm getting ahead of that and already giving it something that I can select it with, okay? So by giving it a class wrapper, later on in the CSS you can write something like, what's the selector for classes in CSS? The dot sign, remember? So for assigning or for creating that wrapper class, you will write something like dot wrapper, and then assign a bunch of CSS rules inside it.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why I create a div is just a box, remember? And I'm creating or assigning it a class of wrapper. That's for the fuchsia one. Then the next one should be this blue one, okay? Because that's the next one in hierarchy, and that's inside the wrapper one. I could create it like a div. The idea is to have as less divs as possible. Otherwise, you will just have a bunch of divs there, and it gets more difficult to maintain. So that's why they created a bunch of new elements. These are new tag names. These all are boxes, just like divs. They have different names to try to give you more meaning while you are using them, okay? So there's one that's called header. And as you can see here, it defines a header for a document or section. That's actually exactly what this is. This is also a header. So instead of using another div, we could use a div and assign it a class of header, and then select it by using the header class. But we can as well use this one. Sorry. Use this headers tag because it exists on HTML5. Okay? So this header will actually be this blue box that I'm moving right now. Can you see it? Okay? So that's the header. Super. Now inside the header, what do we have? We have a bunch of boxes. We have at least these 3 boxes, and also this one this is an image. So of course we could add a wrapper and a div, and inside that div an image. But the less divs, the better. So we could use also that image as a container, as a block itself. Okay. So we just need these 4. Let's start with the first one, which is the socials container. This container contains all the social icons. So I will create a div for it. The class would be socials. And inside there, I will just add my images. Which ones? Well, the icons that I already have for Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram, okay? Now, I won't do this in this exactly moment because the image is so huge that they will just get in the way when I show the web page in the browser. So let's move to the next part, the next box. Let me just add a bunch of enters here so I can freely move, okay? So we have the socials one, and then that's this one here, right? This green one. Then we could be adding the logo, okay? And the logo will be just the image, and we will treat that image as a block, as a box, and move it freely to wherever we want to, because later on we want to move it to the center of this container, both vertically and horizontally, okay? How do we add an image into HTML? IMG, source. Then inside image we have the logo. We still need to add something mandatory here. No? No? What do we need to add to every image tag?
Oh, the alt.
The alt, yes. So this is just a description of the image. How would you describe this image?
Logo of the page.
Yeah, something like the Pompa logo or something. That's more than enough, I think.
And why do we don't define the like pixels?
No, because we are just...
Because it's a part of it.
Yes, exactly. We are all going... All that is design related is going to be in the CSS.
Okay.
So right now we are going to display that image on its natural size, which is quite huge, more than 800 pixels wide. So it will look super huge. Doesn't matter, we are going to style it later on, okay? Then what are we still missing? These two boxes, right? Which element should we use for these menus? No, no. I told you about them.
Section.
No. I told you that for making these menus, we always use... No, and I even showed you in the Apple's website, I deselected these styles and show you these elements. Lists, exactly. So I told you, we always use lists, or normally we use lists for menus because they are super handy. So we have two kinds of lists, remember? The on-order list or the order list. Which one do you want to use? It doesn't really matter because we are going to get rid of all the numbering and vignettes and all that. So let's use an order list just for the sake of it. Inside the order list, what do we need? Lists, items, remember? So for this first menu, which will be this one, so I'm talking about this menu here, we have these list elements, 4 of them, okay? So I will just duplicate these 4 times and just write the... We do need to write something here. Later on, this will become links, right? For now on, let's just leave it as text. So product, discover, crafts, and contact. And we need to tell apart this menu from the other one, okay? One way of telling them apart is by giving it some information to select it later on. It could be an ID, it could be a class. It doesn't really matter as long as you stick to it and remember how you name it, okay? So I will give it a class of top menu. Top menu. Then I will create another one. I can just copy this or type it again. I will create another one. This one will be the... Sorry, this is the main menu, right? Because this one is here. And the top menu is going to be this one here, okay? So this will be another one, top menu. And I create some Lee elements. I need 4 of them. And I do need to write lots of stuff. So about professionals, recent press, and events. I will just remove some spaces from there. That's more or less it. So you can see that we have, this is the wrapper, the outer box, then we have another box, and inside that one, at the same level, we have all these items, right? So we have a box for socials, then we have the logo, and then we have 2 lists items that will later on become the menus. Now it's time to preview our great creation. So let's just save this and open it on a browser. And of course, it will look super awful. That's perfectly fine with us because we are just dealing with the HTML, just the content. And we already have some boxes with some class names on them or IDs. Let's give this an ID, okay, the logo, so we can select it via CSS and mess with it later on. So I will just give it an ID of logo, okay? Just to this image, just to this one. Now, we have everything that we need. We are still missing some images. I will just write a comment. You don't have to type it. I normally do when I have still something to do here. I have something to do. Insert social icons still. I can leave this as a reminder for me for later on, okay? So this is how our website looks on right now. That's perfectly fine, okay? We have the boxes ready. We just need to style them, okay? Make them look different. We do all that by typing CSS code, okay? And we are going to do that in a separate file, okay?
because
And then we're going to link those files together, and we are going to tell this HTML, hey, go ahead and grab the CSS file and apply the styles of that file into this content. Okay? How do we do that? Let's first create our CSS file. Okay? So you could do it on the Finder. It's easier to do it on brackets. I want to create a file inside here, inside the CSS folder. Sorry for the guys watching the video, I will zoom in. I know this looks awful on the video later on, but for guys here on the class, it makes sense. So inside the CSS folder, just right click and click new file. This will create a new file inside that folder, okay? Normally, we name them styles.css. You can name it any way you want to. Avoid the spaces and Latin characters, but you can name it anyway. The extension must be CSS, okay? And that's it, just click enter. This will create that new file and open it here, okay? So now here you can move, here you can move and edit your HTML or move to the CSS, okay? So inside the CSS, well, let's first link those two files together, because right now there's no way for this HTML to know that he should be using that CSS file. So we should add it. Where do we add it? Inside the head element, okay? It should be here. This is the best location for it, okay? Insert some external or add or link external style sheet. That's what we are going to do. The tag name is link. Okay, this is just a comment, okay? This one. So the tag name is link. Then we define an href. We are going to tell him, yeah, go ahead and get inside the CSS folder, and inside there, yes, that's the file we want. And we need to tell them what's the relationship between this file and this document. And the relationship that you state with a rel attribute is that this file, it's an style sheet. And that's all you need. Okay? So what we are doing here is telling the browser to go out and fetch that file and grab it from us. And it will apply all the styles that it found in that file into these elements inside this document. Okay? So this is our external style sheet. Now we are ready to actually type some code or type some CSS inside this CSS file. Right?
yes.
So we can get started and we can start styling our document. So the first change we are going to make, I don't know if you are able to see it, but the website has a different background color. It has more like a light gray color than a white. This is white, this is light gray, okay? The color is F5 3 times. So let's first assign that color to the biggest element that we can find on the HTML. So which element is wrapping all the web page? The wrapper? More than the wrapper. Who is wrapping the wrapper? The body, right? So if we change the body, we are going to change the whole window, the whole browser. We call it the viewport. So what we do is we change the body tag. Remember, how do we change it? Because it's a tag name, we refer to it with its tag name. Okay? So just body. Not body, but body. And then we can play with the background color. Now, this is where brackets come super handy, because there's a bunch of CSS rules out there. If you start typing background, you will get a list of the properties that start with background. But even there, getting to the background color takes you some down key arrow keystrokes, okay? But there's a way to filter this even more. If you just type, for example, a C, it will filter the words that starts with a C and have another C somewhere there, okay? And if you, for example, type a no, this is what I normally do for adding background color. I already learned the shortcut for me, these letters, but it can be any, if you write an R, it will also work or stuff like that, right? It's filtering the elements. So once you get the hang of it, it makes you select the properties much more faster, okay? So in my case, it's background color, and it will be an F5. This is a light gray color, okay? it almost is difficult to see in this projector, but once you save this and refresh your web page, sorry, here, you now will see the different colors there. Okay, it's subtle, but it maybe in the video looks more than in the projector here on class. But I hope you get the idea. Okay, so now we have the body. Super. Let's move to the next one, which is the wrapper. So let's talk about sizing of the website. So the way this website works is that if you open this website on a huge display, such as these ones, it will still look like it's inside a box, but the box will look super small, something like this maybe, or even like this. So if you open that page in these big screens, you will see that the page, in fact, has a kind of a wrapper, which is this box here. And all the website is kind of wrapped inside that box. Okay? The size of that box is 1200 pixels. That's because of the design, okay? And then if you start making your website smaller, that wrapper will shrink and get more narrow and more narrow as you actually shrink the container, okay? If the container is bigger, the wrapper won't grow bigger than 1200. So it has a restriction on the upper side of not being able to grow more than 1200 pixels wide, and it doesn't have any restriction in the lower side. So if the screen is lower than 1200 pixels, the wrapper will also shrink. How do we do that in CSS? Well, we need to change some properties of this element. We gave him a class of wrapper for being able to create that class and mess with that, okay? So how do we create the class wrapper on CSS? No? So we need to write dot wrapper, and anything we create here, guys, can you please be quiet? Anything you write here will be applied to this div because it's of class, it has the class wrapper inside it, okay? So we are going to change its max width to 1200 pixels, and we are going to assign it a width of 100%. That means it will always try to grow up and fill all its container size, which is the body width, is at the end the browser, okay, the viewport. So it will try to always be as big as the browser, but it won't be able to grow more or bigger than 1200 pixels in wide, okay, in its width. Right? Yes. That's all we're going to do for the wrapper. We are not going to see any changes here. If we refresh it, it looks still the same. That's perfectly fine. Let's start making some changes that we can actually see on the browser. So we are going to move to the next box, which is the blue one. This one, right? This one is called how in my HTML? Header? Yes, it's the header, right? How can we change the way the header looks in CSS? How do we select it? Any ideas?
Point?
No?
Like body?
Exactly, like body with its tag name. Because it doesn't have a class, it doesn't have an ID. So the only way we can select it, in fact, is by its tag name. It makes sense because it's the only header item we are going to have in the whole website. So it's okay and it's safe for us to select it this way. Okay? So now we have the header, and let's just change its background color to some horrible color that we can clearly see, just like a horrible red. So if you assign that, now you will be able to see that box in there. And it makes more sense now what the header is and where it is, okay? Yes?
What is the
So we gave it a background color of red. Now we're able to see it, right? You can see the header wrapping all the elements that it has inside. It has a box. It has a div that is the socials. Because this one doesn't have any content, it's getting smashed all the way, and with a height 0, we are not able to, it's not pushing anything anywhere, okay? Then we have the image, which looks super huge. and then we have the two order menus, these ones, right? So now let's start actually moving this from the position that they are to the position that they need to be. Let's first center the wrapper, okay? For centering the wrapper, there are, I don't know, maybe 5 ways of centering stuff in CSS, and most of them are super weird. For example, this one. There's not a simple something like text align center. There's a new display which is called Flex. We are going to use it later on, which is the easiest way of centering stuff. Let's start with the most used one, which is playing with the margins of the stuff. So this wrapper, just for this wrapper is also there. If you want to see it, don't write it because we are going to erase it, but I will give it a background color of blue so you can see it. There's a wrapper, okay?
What is VH?
Viewport height. We are going to use it later on. So the wrapper is there, okay, and we want to center it. You can see that it's not centered, okay? So how do we center it on the screen? Because if this was a bigger screen, it will look aligned to the left by default, okay? But we don't want to center it. How do we center it? We go and say something like, let me erase all this. We play with its margins. And this is something that you have to learn, okay? So let me try to make a, I will just explain this on class, and you can review shorthanded things later on. So for centering the wrapper, basically we use the shorthanded margin attribute, and we assign it a 0 value to the top and value of that box, and an automatic to the right and left, and that just with a space. That way the browser is able to actually center that box. Now, the next thing we want is, we don't want that box to be so huge, okay? If you check it here, the box, the header is just this box here, right? The size of it is, I will cheat a little bit just to inspect the size and check the actual size. The size is 210, you can see it there, okay, at the top left, more or less. So that's the height of the element. So let's just change that here. So apart from assigning a background color red, I will also assign it a height of 210 pixels, right? So now the size of the box, if you don't specify any size, the box will just grow to fit all its the items that it's containing, right? But if you assign a specific height, just as I did, then this box is 210 pixels height and not a pixel more or less, okay? Its content is overflowing, of course. By default, we are able to watch the content that is overflowing a container. We could change this. It would say that the overflow should be hidden. Then we won't be able to see anything that overflows this box. I will just erase this one for now because I do want to see them, and so we can change them, okay? So we have our container for the header, which is this red box, and we have some elements inside it. Let's move to the next one, which in HTML is which one? The socials one, okay? So now it will make sense to add the images and start messing with them. So I still needed to add some social icons. Let's add them now. Just image, source, and inside image we have, the first one is which one? Pinterest. And I will, excuse me if I don't add the alt right now, then it comes Facebook and then Instagram. Okay? So I just added the 3 images, as easy as that. Now the problem is that because they are huge SVGs, they are going to be also huge on the website. So if I save this and refresh it, so refresh this one, then I just see the whole SVGs super, super huge, okay? And we will talk about SVG more later on. It's a super nice format for vectors. They enable pixelate. You can grow them or shrink them any way you want to. And the file sizes are super small, right? If you open it, they are just 1 kilobyte size. So they are super, super small, okay? So whenever you can use SVGs because you made some art on Illustrator, such as here, for example, it will make sense to save this as SVG and maintain its vector capabilities. Now, anytime you use something fancy as new, you should always be aware of it and check in Can I Use how well adopted it is, right? So we should check if we can add SVGs to our website. And we are pretty covered and pretty safe there because every single browser out there, even Opera Mini that doesn't plays fair with anything, it allows to use SVGs as images, okay? So we have those big, huge images. We want our box to be super more small, right? We want that box to be just this small space here, right? Okay, so let's style that box. The box is class socials. So we should select it. How do we select something with class socials? Or how do we create the class socials? Yes. Let's just assign a width of 1000 pixels, a height of 30, and a background color of blue so we can see it. So it's just a small box, okay? Where is it? It's right, sorry again, it's right there. Can you see it? So now the items are smaller. By default, they grow to the same width of its container, and as the container just got super smaller, then also the icons got quite smaller, okay? But we want them to be even smaller than that. So one way we could do it quite fast right now is just to make them be 1/3 of the container, okay? That means the three of them should fit inside this small container. We don't want to do that for every image, so is there a way we could select all these 3 images without selecting this one as well? Yes, there is in CSS, okay? And the way we do it is, instead of, if I use this selector, what will happen? It will select all the images in the document. That means it will be selecting these ones as well as this one, okay? So what I want to do is change the width of those images to, let's say, if you write something like 33.33333, it will be 1/3 of the container, right? Let's make it a little bit smaller, just 30. By doing that, the images now fit there, but also these images got smaller. I don't know if you see it, okay? So we just want to affect these 3, but not this one. And the way we can do this is, instead of selecting all the images out there, just select the images that are inside the div socials. And this is pretty easy stuff. So we just write inside something with class socials, select the images with a blank space here, okay? This will restrict the selection to only the images that are inside this box, okay? Now you can see that this one are still 33%. This one is still super huge, and we still need to take care of it later on, okay? Super. So let's move to the next part, which is actually the image, okay? How do we select that image? Well, we gave it an ID, so it makes it super easy to select, right? Just with the ID. How do we select IDs, or how do we create IDs in CSS? Yes. So to select that, we use the hashtag. Remember, hashtag for IDs, dot for class names, and just the plain name for tag names. Now, let's change the width. I think it's 160 pixels. This will make the logo super small. That's right, that's fine. And now, what we want to do is center that thing both horizontally and vertically inside that red box, okay? And that takes us to another super weird thing in CSS, which is absolute positioning. I will also pause the video for a moment while I explain this on the blackboard. Try to move this logo in an absolute positioning way. So if we just add a position, absolute to this item, what I told you that was going to happen is that the browser will remove it from the document flow, okay? So just by adding this rule, look what happens. The logo, the rest of the items will just ignore the logo. That means this item will go up, right? As if this one didn't exist. So if I refresh it, you can see that now they are just ignoring it. Okay? Now, if I start playing with the spacing, for example, the bottom, if I say something like bottom 0, that means this box, this logo box, will try to leave 0 pixels from its bottom to the bottom of its first container that has a position declared. Now that's a lot of wording. Let's review it. If I just do it like this, look where this logo is going to be. I don't know if you see it, but it's flush to the bottom of the document. Okay? Why? This is what happened. We assigned a position obsolete to the logo. Then it went ahead and looked for its first parent, which is the header, right? And asked him, do you have a position declared? Do you have in the CSS something that says position something? If we check the header, we don't. We don't have any position declared here. So it says, okay, then I won't align with you, and I move to the next one. And then it gets to the wrapper, and it asks him, hey, wrapper, do you have any position declared? No. Then it continues and goes to the body. The body doesn't have any position declared as well, but he cannot go further away from the body, so it's just aligning itself with the body in this case. That's why if we tell him bottom 0, it's leaving 0 pixels between itself and the bottom of the body. We don't want that. We want to align it inside this box. That means we need to assign some position to that header box, okay? And normally what you do, not to mess around with this box too much, you just assign a position relative, which is the most like normal position out there, okay? So as soon as you do this, if you refresh your web page, now the logo is aligning to the bottom part of the container. If you start playing along with the alignments, for example, if you do left 50%, that means it will move the logo 50% away or to the middle part of its container. Okay? Look. Not here, sorry. Here you should leave the position relative, sorry, in the header. What I want to change is inside the logo. I want to start messing around with where can I move it, right? So if you type here left 50%, this will move the logo, as you can see. It starts rendering the logo right at the middle of the container. Yes?
Yes.
Now, how do we center this? It's not really centered, right? We still need to move it a little bit to the left. How much should we move it?
5.
No, I mean, not a number, but how could you calculate that? No? Let me. So what we do is just push it 50% to the left, then move it backward. Wait a second. Transform. Translate X. Okay, minus 50%. This will move it backward. Now it's centered horizontally. We also want to move it top 50%. This will push it 50% of the. It will start right in the middle, in the vertical middle, and we still need to translate Y minus 50%. Okay? And now we have a perfectly centered icon in both horizontally and vertically. I will pause the video here for a second. So that's what we did, and we have that finally where we want it. Now let's follow more or less the same approach to move these boxes to their corresponding places, okay? So first of all, let's get rid of this horrible numbering and this vertical positioning because we want it to be horizontal, okay? So, and we want to change that on both of them. So instead of selecting each one independently with its class name, let's select both of them because both of them are order lists, okay? So let's select all the order lists that are inside the header. How do we do that? Header, O, OL, okay? And we are also going to mess with the list that are inside those OLs. And let's make some changes. The first one, There's a couple of ways of changing this from vertical to horizontal. I think the easiest one, because it also gets rid of the numbering, is change the display to inline block. What this does, look at the change. Now we have the menu items without the numbering. So it really didn't matter if they were order or unordered list because we got rid of that anyway, okay? And now they are all on one line. Let's play with the background colors to see where they are. So if you assign a background color to this one, let's give it an awful green one, maybe this one. There are my Lee elements, right? Now you can see them. Where are the all elements? Let's give it a background color, aqua or something. There they are. So by default, the OL elements are behaving just as normal boxes, as normal divs, expanding to grow to the 100% of its container. And then inside them, they just have a bunch of elements, right? So let's start by moving this, the main one. It should be somewhere here, right? Here's where it should be, somewhere there, okay? That's the first one, the main menu, which has a class of main menu. So let's start to messing around with it. So we could call it just like main menu, right? Because it has the class main menu. It will have a width of, let's say, 500 pixels. This will make it quite smaller, okay? And we want to put it at the bottom and at the center. So we will follow more or less the same idea as we did on the logo, right? So just change its position to absolute. This will again remove it from the document flow, making the other one to occupy the same space. That's why they are like collapsing. If we change the bottom to 0, now this one will be kind of flush, but not that flush to the bottom of the container, right? It has a specific width, a position absolute, a bottom 0. 0 is the only number that you can write without the unit, because 0 pixels is the same as 0%, as 0 ems, or 0 rems. So if you write a 0, you can leave it unitless, but on all the other numbers, you do need always to specify the unit and never leave a blank space between the number and the unit. Now, why is this box not flush to the bottom of the element? Because it has some margin by default. If you inspect it and select it there, come on. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a margin. Can you see it? Yeah, it's like orange there. So it has a margin into the top and a margin into the bottom. If you select that, you will see who is the culprit of that. The culprit is the user agent, because by default, it adds some margin before and after the OL elements, by default. Now, we don't want that space. We don't want those margins, okay? How can we get rid of it? Well, we can get rid of all of them in one step if we affect all the OL, right? And instead of having a margin, if we write margin 0, it will erase the margin on the 4 sides of the square. Yes? Yes. So now it should be flush, even flush to the bottom, right? Now you can play with that. If you don't want it to be flush, you can write something like, let's leave a little bit more space, maybe 10 pixels from the bottom, and it will move it a little bit. And we know how to center this horizontally, right? So how do we center it? Horizontally.
Let's go left.
Yes, and then, because this will move it here, right? Then transform, translate x minus 50%. Now it's center, okay?
Translate x?
Yes, because we just want to center it horizontally, okay? Vertically, we absolutely position it 10 pixels from the bottom of its container. Yes?
Yes.
Super. Now, let me show you one other way of centering items. So if you have just a bunch of boxes and want to center them inside a container, you can also, in the container, which will be this one, write something like text align center. Now, it will try to center all the items that have an inline block in them. So as you can see, it's working. It's kind of centering all the Lee elements inside the OL, right? Let's move this OL to the place it should be, just as we did with this one, right? The other OL is called, what's the name of the other one? Top menu, right? So we should write something like top menu. Sorry. This one is a little bit smaller than the other one. Let's give it a 400 pixels. This will make it quite smaller. Okay. Now, how do we put it right here at the top right part of the of this box? Again with position absolute. Okay. And again, yeah, you could do something like right 0 if you don't want to calculate the space of the left. You could go with the left, but with left, you should be playing with this value and adding more and more values to the left part. You can do that here on the inspector by playing with this value here, the left one, and try to put it, I don't know, wherever you want to, but it makes more sense to play with the right space in this case than with the left space, right? So instead of playing with the left one, let's just write, I don't know, 0 if you want it flush to the right. If I write top 0, then it will also flush, sorry, to the top, right? We don't want it as flush to the top, so maybe let's add 10 pixels there. That's coming along quite well. Let's add more space between these items because they are too close to each other. The way you could do that is on every Lee element, you could add more margin to the left and right of each one, right? So is there a way of selecting all of them? Yes, this one, right? This selects all the Lee elements that are inside OL elements that are inside header element, right? And we just play with the margin. 0 auto top bottom because we don't want to mess with the top and bottom margins. And then maybe 16 pixels on each side. This will push them or start pushing them maybe a little bit more. Yeah, that's starting to look okay. Maybe this one shouldn't have any spacing to the left because if you look, this is not centered, right? And this also occurs because the width of the lists are different. This is 48, this one is 47, this one is 35. So the widths are different. Maybe if we assign a fixed width, it will be better. So we could assign a fixed width of, let's say, I don't know, 60 pixels. No, because now we are moving, but we should, right? Maybe a little bit less. This one, we must use bigger stuff. I will just remove this one for now, just to have this one here. Let's remove the left margin of the first item, only the first one, okay? Because we want this a little bit more to the left, and even so, it won't be centered. So I will just forget about that for a second, okay? Now, we are almost done with the top part. It's starting to look like this one, right? A little bit, okay? Now let's get rid of all those awful colors that I was using. I just used them to temporarily have a look of the items, so just erase anything that says background color or something weird. Just don't erase this one, right? The gray one, because this one we need it for the body. And now if you refresh it, now it's starting to look quite fine, okay? Let's do some last thing before we wrap this video up, okay? And that will be changing the fonts, because the fonts still look quite awful, not quite as the fonts that the designer wanted, okay? So let's change all that. I won't give you the whole lecture about font types. We can talk about them later on. The thing that we are always going to be using, or most of the time, is look for the font in Google Fonts, and add it. So if you go to fonts.google.com or google.com/fonts, it's the same. You get to this nice page where Google gives you for free 884 families or font types to choose from. You could select, I don't know, handwriting or just sans serif or serif. Remember, the serif is this decoration all the letters have at the end. Sans serif is from French without serif. And the serif are these small decorations that you can find at the end of the letters, right? So you could look for that. What I normally do with the designers I work with is I tell them, if you're going to make a web design, just look for the fonts you like here in Google and stick to the fonts that are available on Google, okay? That doesn't mean you cannot use your own font. You can do it. We can learn how to do it later on. So for this design, particularly, the designer wanted to use the font name Lato. So just look for it, Lato or Lato, okay? You can use this search here. This is the font we want to use for the whole website. Normally, we recommend to choose at most 2 fonts. Maybe you can choose one for big headings and titles and the other one for small paragraphs. But don't add more than 2 fonts because then it starts to look awful, the design. Okay, so let's click on this plus sign here. This will add this box at the bottom of the screen. Let me just move it. If you click on it, you can even customize the font. If you click on that, you can bring different font weights, okay? Let's bring at least 3 of them. Some more light font and something more bold, okay? Watch out the light here, not to bring too many because everyone will be a call to the server and you will need to download these font files, okay? Then go to embed. And this should make a little bit sense for you. Super difficult, but this, we already used this link somewhere, right? What's that? Where do we use this link and href and stylesheet? For adding an external stylesheet, remember? We used it here, right there, when we added our stylesheet. So these fonts are just going to be treated as another stylesheet. So all you need to do is copy this, just copy it, and paste it here before your styles. Why before? Because first we want to go on and grab this font, and then using our styles, we will assign it to any element or all the elements that we want to. So first we need to go and grab it, and now here we can use the font family Lato or Lato, I don't know how to pronounce it, with these weights, 3, 4, and 700. Right? How do we add it? We go to the styles. We want the whole website to use that font. So where would it make sense to write it? Exactly, to the biggest wrapper out there. So inside the body, you specify the font family. It should be the same name as the file. And then normally we type something like this. This is a fallback. If for some reason the user wasn't able to fetch the font from Google, then it will choose the first sans serif font from the user's computer or device. Okay? And that's it. Magically, if you save this and save this as well, okay, and refresh the web page, let me just zoom it out. You can see that now we are using that nice Lato font out there, right? And now it's starting to look better, right? So the only things I changed, remember to save your HTML. You shouldn't have any dots here. On the HTML, I just pasted the Google Fonts link. I am using this Lato font in these weights, right? And on CSS, I just assigned that font family to the whole design. Now, let's use the weights differently. This text should be smaller and in a light gray color, right? So these one are the list that are inside the top menu, right? These ones. How can you select only those? Because this selection selects all the list out there. So if we change the color, how do you change the color of a text? Just with color. So if you go with a light gray, maybe, I don't know, a 666. Now it will change. Let me make it more lighter, so CCC. As you can see, I'm changing both of them. This is too light. Okay, maybe something like this. I will put it on 9. Okay. If you don't want to change the 2 of them, you just want to select, so you shouldn't change it here, right? You should select only the list element that are inside the top menu. How do you do it? You could use something like, why not, top menu, Lee. Since this is after this one, this comes after this one, it will override it. So if you just write here color, Now these ones are black and these ones are gray because you are just affecting those ones. You are restricting and selecting only the elements that are inside this top menu. And let's also change the font size to, let's say, 12 pixels to make them look smaller. Maybe that's too small.
Font size.
13 pixels for me. Okay, and I think that will be all for now. So let me just stop the video.